Welcome to the brand new podcast series called Fellowship of the Books. This is your host, Ayushi Jaiswal, also known as It's a Nerdy Thing.
Oh, hi, this is Shayan. I am a graphic artist. I also like to read. So combine this both, a graphic novel might be hatching somewhere in future, but for now we are discussing on Watchmen. Unfortunately, I haven't read the book yet, but I have seen the movie and the series. So I will try to talk in that perspective of those kind of audience who haven't read the book yet and are curious how they are portrayed in the books. So, show whom you're next, I think.
Oh yeah, I'm next, right? Yeah. So hi, Shoham here, part-time corporate slave, full-time nerd, and I have seen the movie, the TV series, and I've read the original book. And I haven't read the follow-up book, Doomsday Clock, because let's face it, reading comic books is for nerds and geeks, and I'm way too cool to handle. And I don't have any discernible qualities or anything. The reason I'm here because I'm friends with all of you. Okay. So I'll just pass my torch to Sutirtha and let him tell the actual thing, because honestly, whatever I said is utter garbage. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sutirtho. I am also part-time corporate slave and also part-time nerd. Basically, these are conflicting professions of mine, and one always gets in the way of the other. Honestly, if this was the weekdays, I wouldn't be here. But moving back to the original topic, we are here to discuss Watchmen, created by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, two of the most influential creators of comic books of all time, actually. And let me just start by describing the theme of Watchmen. The theme of Watchmen is, in very simple terms, the theme of Watchmen is what if superheroes just existed in real life.
Sudhita, if I must interject, we have to let Ishwar introduce himself. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
first,
Yes.
first.
Don't steal his
I'll pass
thunder,
the torch
Sudhita.
to, yeah. But first, let me pass the torch to my other friend Ishwar.
Yeah. And now you say
Ishwar,
it. Yeah.
Hi everyone, it's nice to be here and it's nice to be among friends. I'm Ishwar, a full-time academic slave. I'm working on my thesis and I'm a fan of graphic novels and comic books. And I'm fine with people calling me a geek or not, because at this point, like, who cares? I mean, the pandemic is the best time to sit at home and read this
Okay.
stuff.
Geek.
And
Agreed.
Okay. No.
But yeah,
Ishwar is a very dear friend
Also,
of mine.
being a nerd is cool now.
Yeah.
man, like the Big
Course.
Bang Theory made it.
Yeah, keep telling you. Anyway, just let's
Thank the Lord
get.
for Kevin Feige. Being a
Oh,
nerd is
yeah.
cool now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so this has completely gone off the rail. Just go back to the actual podcast.
Yes, let's just
So
go back to the graphic
gonna-
novel. So,
Yeah. So first, so should I go first?
yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Go.
So Watchmen is almost it's like a product of its time, all while being a satirical take of the political climate of that time. And what I mean is actually that you have to know that the person who wrote this, Alan Moore, is basically both genius and a maniac. So whatever he does and whatever content what comes out of his demented but brilliant mind will be a type of satire, or will be a type of what is the right word, uh, yeah,
Brilliant.
exactly. So it's to berate the particular genre that he's writing in. For instance, a couple of things about Alan Moore. He has always been very interested with the concept of hermetism. Now, what is hermetism? So hermetism is basically, it's a kind of a religious practice, all while not being that too much religion, like there's not too many doctrines or too many norms of that particular way of spirituality. It's more spirituality, but it's like pegged as a religion by many, and it's basically about having a set of principles. So what his perspective is regarding hermetism is basically like construction and deconstruction of one particular entity. Like it, it's basically like making like putting a mirror in front of yourself so that you can see the flaws of your ways. But you will be dressed in a very in a very royal manner, and you'll be everyone will be adoring you, but you yourself will realize that you are not that good of a person. There's clearly some problems with you. So that's where Alan Moore really shines. Okay, so that is the same thing with
Everyone is
Oliver.
not good as white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very large gray area when it comes to his characters and stories. Okay, so
Except when it comes to women, because they're
Yeah.
just one-dimensional caricatures.
Yeah, women
Yeah.
are very
That's spandex clad, like I don't know, like some bad word towards it. Yeah.
I can be.
So that's how he portrays. But so Watchmen basically came in the we just before the podcast, me and Ishwar were talking about this. So Watchmen came during the modern era of comics and the Bronze Age. So those who don't know, who are not familiar with the particular this kind of age and the time periods of comic books and how it has progressed over the years. So Golden Age is basically, it's very campy, it's very like hero centric, and it's always like giving like in good versus evil, always good should be the one to triumph. So
Yeah.
that
The stories were very
Yeah,
one-dimensional. You had good, you had evil. Their roles were clearly
and for the
delineated.
general public, an ideal example is the Adam West Batman series or the old Green Hornet series, which I must recommend everyone should watch because Bruce Lee is in it.
Okay.
No, an even better option would be like those classic Superman.
Classic like George
yes.
Reeves, George Reeves Superman, not even Christopher Reeves.
Yeah.
I'll say George Reeves,
Yeah.
black and white Superman. So those kind of things were very much a product of the golden age of comics. Then over there it came the silver age. So it became a little bit grounded. So the whole concept of like team affiliations and a little bit of the impact of Second World War and all those things started seeping into the mythos of comic books.
There was
Yeah.
a lot more structure into the stories of the Silver Age because
Yeah.
each character had their own defined backstory,
Different backstories,
their own history, and these events that motivated them, they guided their lifestyle. There was a structure, and it gave them the structure that made them who they are, and they followed that structure throughout
Yeah.
their fictional character biographies. And yes, there is also the
Right.
collaboration, the concept of a shared universe, and how everyone interacted with each
and,
other.
and often,
These
often
sort of things came
Yeah,
under
the
the
most
and one of the most heavy tropes of Silver Age was that incorporation of the US, or so to speak, any kind of armies into a comic book story. Like it's always was about
Right.
glorifying the army. So
there was actually this one
Yeah.
other element. So I was reading this Grant Morrison book called Super Gods, which is kind of a deconstruction of comic books through the ages. And one important aspect he kind of emphasized on was the aspect of science fiction, as in plots were more out there. They were weird. They were not exactly the most accurate of plots, but they happened to have elements of science
Yeah.
fiction. Now, science fiction, as such, you don't necessarily have to have the science as something accurate or something grounded. You can always provide some kind of backup explanation at some other point in time and so on. Which is why the Silver Age, a lot of people say, starts with the arrival of the Flash, Barry Allen, and not Flash Jay Garrick, who is essentially a Golden Age hero. So you had plots that were very, think about it. The Golden Age happened to have characters such as the old Justice Society of America, a super team that fought in the World War. But the Silver Age happened to start with Barry Allen, the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, and most of the Justice League being formed at this period.
Okay.
So a lot of these plots
also the inclusion of the African American community into the entire superhero genre.
Yeah.
It was like before that,
Yeah.
it was practically unheard of. Like the whole
Yeah.
appearance of Black Panther. If I am not, yeah, I'm not remembering the dates correctly, but it was during,
63, if I'm not
yeah,
wrong.
it's somewhere between the end of like late Silver Age and the just the beginning of the Bronze Age. That's
Yes.
where he just
Yes,
came
yes.
into the fray. And
So
Jack Kirby,
Yes.
among these
curated.
ages, at
Yeah.
some point of time, there was some government regulations on these comic book,
Yeah,
right?
so one thing I just good thing that you pointed that out. So there was heavy censorship, right? In the
Exactly.
comics.
So
In
is it in
Golden
fiction
Age,
age or
no, it was like uh, censorship mandated by the government actually, and there was
exactly
some
like
like
Comics
you
Code
can't show
Authority.
sexual
comics were
explicit
yeah, I forgot the
images
name.
and
Yeah,
all the
so
this thing. Okay.
so things were this like you always have to show that good will win, and the
Exactly.
heroes can't be
Yeah.
flawed in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, and no
and
drugs.
and and and
No
yeah,
drugs.
no drugs and all that, and most importantly no kind of like they would say it's a like basically they wanted not to portray the LGBTQ community in comics. That's the
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
they would use such a derogatory term as a deviant sexuality or something like that to
Yes.
just
Yeah.
to always make the uh, white cis heterosexual man the hero, and the
Yeah.
woman will be, and sometimes they'll include a women superhero and she will be like scantily clothed, basically
Yes.
a semi
It's
pornographic
all like
character.
she has to
Yeah,
be, yes, lustrous and all that
less dress. Yeah, so
stuffs.
it went
Yes.
on
Yeah.
for a while till the Bronze Age came along. So where actually some good writing and
The thing
groundedness.
is that
Yeah,
they were actually that was a male centric society,
yeah,
and like
exactly.
even the second sex, the women,
Hmm.
were like did not have dimension to their characters. So
Hmm.
how will the third sex
Right.
come
Yeah,
come
that's
along?
come along exactly.
Right.
So
Exactly. So the interesting thing, Bronze Age is interesting because the thing that heralded the birth of the Bronze Age was one of the very first character deaths in comics,
Okay.
and it was Gwen Stacy.
oh,
And
I thought
Gwen
Jason
Stacy.
Todd's death happened first, right? Or I could be in the
No,
wrong.
no,
No,
no.
Yeah.
Jason Todd's
Stacy's
death
death happened
much
in the
later.
70s.
Much later, yeah.
Yeah, much later. So Gwen Stacy's death heralded a new era in comics. Like stories became even more grounded and even more realistic. Characters started to be written a lot better. There was some sense of realism to what they were doing in the pages of their comic books. So with that, it slowly started transitioning because at that point in time, when we're talking late 70s, right, we happened to have the Black Panther running from 63 onwards or something, and he was beating up the KKK.
Yeah.
And the Bronze Age started these company crossovers, the DC implosion. There's a lot of events that happened. It was one of the most busiest, you could say, ages in terms of style and substance for a lot of comic books. And then finally, we reach the modern age, which is where Watchmen is set, 1985 to the present.
Okay.
Now, the modern age is fantastic because you happen to have, some of the greatest titles
Yeah.
happen. So from 85, you had 86, The Dark
Yeah,
Knight Returns.
that's one of the like greatest feat Batman will ever achieve. Let's be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, I mean,
It
come
is
on,
very
man.
right wing-ish, and being I don't want to get politics into it, but being a kind of liberal, and despite that liking the right wing kind of politics agenda hidden inside Miller's writing, and basically what he does is a type of gentrification, but
Yeah,
I'm not never in support of gentrification, but if you are going to do it, you should do it in that way, like just give them.
yeah. No, the
Yeah,
interesting thing, yeah, that's the interesting thing about
yeah.
the whole book, right? Superman is the right wing
Yeah,
figure. Like
but
he's the government.
Batman's idealistic ideals and the way he kind of tries to like rally in all these basically jobless youngsters and
Students.
goons, and it's very
Yeah.
right wingish approach, in order like kind
Yeah.
of like a
Yeah.
brainwashing even, like just to yeah.
Yeah.
But here, since Superman is working for a fascist government, he is portrayed as a right wing figure, or like a right wing god, so to speak. Yeah,
Right.
but
Right. Exactly.
yeah, and so it's a very interesting take on like it's like kind of like subverting the genre, and then surprising, like twisting it in like however Frank Miller likes it. So yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
Speaking of Frank Miller, there was also Daredevil Born Again at that era.
yeah, that's also a
Daredevil
classic.
story which
That's also a
which,
classic.
which the one Daredevil story which defined all future Daredevil stories.
Yeah, like
That's like the touchstone,
yeah,
man. The
it's a
standard
blueprint.
which
It's
Daredevil
basically the
set.
blueprint. This is how it's done, and just follow it. Like the same way
Oh,
entire like Christopher Nolan's entire filmography could be traced back to Blade Runner, the original cut,
Yeah.
because this is a small story. Like whenever they started at the time when they started shooting for Batman Begins, so Nolan apparently got his entire crew and they saw the movie Blade Runner. Okay, so and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
afterwards Nolan said that this is how we are going to make it. This is the approach. This is like the reference point for us. So let's get this going. So now we have possibly one of the greatest franchises ever made, arguably. Like they had,
Yeah.
but it's a very good franchise. Yeah.
The interesting thing is, talking about Batman. Let's face it, he had two of his probably greatest stories then. Year
Yeah.
One and The Dark Knight Returns.
both by Frank Miller.
Yes.
Both are Frank Miller, yeah.
Yeah, both by Frank.
But
Frank Miller was at his absolute
yeah,
peak
but
in the 80s.
then
and
it all went downhill. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
it
let's not
continues to
get
go
into
downhill.
it.
Back,
Yeah, let's not get into it. Just let's talk about Alan Moore. So
Yeah, it's
one more
interesting to
Alan
see
Moore.
how a comic. It's interesting to see how a comic has turned into such a political, like serious
Yeah.
political discussion.
Right.
oh,
That's-
that's why it's fascinating.
like people see us as like kind of like these man childs who don't know anything about the world and just like like to watch like colorful
Cartoons.
people, cartoons and
Cartoons and comics, yes.
comics. But there are so many
Exactly.
layers to it. Like there's so political relevancy to comics. It's kind of like literature at this point. Like
No,
Here
that's the
the
point.
thing is,
It should be classified.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
the thing is,
It
the thing is, this is the problem with the perception of comic books by
the general audience. Right?
people who practice, the general audience, those who write prose literature and all.
Yeah.
There are a few niche comic books such as Watchmen, Sandman by Neil Gaiman, Mouse, Persepolis.
Mm.
They are regarded in a higher standard compared to regular comics books, which is why they are called graphic novels and not comic books. These are
Yeah.
the comic books that are taught in universities as part of English literature or language courses, and these are the only comic books which have been fortunate enough to have their potential, have their content properly recognized. The political commentary, socio-political commentary, the depth of their material, the writing. Only these comic books and have gotten the recognition because of this thing. And for most other
Right.
comic books, they haven't gotten the same recognition because people cannot look past the surface. But the truth
exactly.
is, 90% of all comic books have these kind of serious political messages contained within them, and it is
The only reason people continue to look down on them is because they think it's written for a children's audience, and that's how they're marketed, which is understandable. But only if people start looking beyond a marketing tag will they realize what they're actually
like
missing out.
even from the Silver Age, like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, what they did was basically since they had this huge censorship to deal with, they wanted to,
Yeah, they just start following it.
they
stopped following
they
the
didn't
code.
like they couldn't go against the corporate, I am assuming, back then. So what they did is they created this kind of allegorical things. Like X-Men was a huge thing for African American kids and the LGBT kids. It was basically representation of that. Magneto and Magneto and Professor X are basically Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. So one is an extremist looking for like the right, and another one is kind of a pacifist.
Pacifist,
So these things has always been there. We just because when we were kids, we won't look past that particular surface. But as we grow, as we progress, as we mature, our thinking and our perception of the entire world changes, and we are able to see things that are not there, like in an explicit manner. Like it's not very obvious.
Yeah, we are able to see the influence of the contemporary issues and societies on the writer.
Right. But in a way, we have to thank Alan Moore and Watchmen for that, because it was the first time the heroes who are morally gray, not bad, not good, morally gray.
Yes.
Because if you watch someone like comedian in the movies or in the comic book, he's basically a maniac,
Right.
but he's a rapist and he is extremely
yes.
racist, and he's a bad person, but he has he has
He's a
been
hero.
like portrayed as a hero to the general audience for a very long time,
Yes.
and he has these medals and honors and like lot of distinctions, but at its very core he's a bad person, but also he kind of
He's a
has
monster.
he's a monster, but at when he's
He also has a soft side.
outside, and he also has a moral, which is a huge surprise for everyone, because when he goes to Moloch's house at the night and he starts crying after learning like what Ozymandias is like planning, or what the government is planning and everything, and how many deaths might happen, this kind of impacts him. And at the beginning, when like in the flashbacks in the movie or in the panels in the comic book, it shows that he's a very very demented bad person at all, like, but still it's shown that he has a human side. Probably the reason first Phil Spector tries to be an apologist for him. Like, if you guys remember, like when Sally tells her mom that how could you forgive him, like he after what all the things he had done to you. So
Yes.
she kind of gives an explanation. I don't remember the exact quote verbatim, but it's kind of like uh, as
It was a different
like
time.
years go by.
Sort of.
Yeah, it was a different time, different. It's no a good justification for what he did, but it's you can kind of see her point. Like, she is a she's a elderly woman slowly, whereas her entire profession or whatever she did, like kind of like kind of were based on her looks and her appearance, and how she was basically portrayed as a like iconic figure.
Eye
Okay,
candy.
like an actress,
Yeah.
per se, like
Iconic eye
pretty much
candy, yes.
someone similar to an actor. Yeah, iconic eye candy. Yeah, that's the word. So but to lose that altogether has taken a toll on her. Like, she is still like
She's
even
going through an identity crisis.
identity crisis, and going to and she's going to that it has deteriorated to such a degree that she is looking back at her molestation as a fond memory, which is pretty like messed up when you think about it. Like, she's
Yeah,
looking
and it
at
also
that.
kind of says a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
more. No, like they had a
Yeah,
relationship and so on
she
and
had a
so forth.
relationship, but what the comedian did on that particular day was non-consensual. So thus, it
Right.
was a pretty much a very
Yeah, yeah,
like explicit case of molestation. But she is currently
yeah.
looking it through like
I
a rose tinted
yeah,
filter, right?
right.
So these things, like the actual morally gray aspect of the characters uh, is what Alan Moore does best. Like, no one is fully good, no one is fully bad. Somebody will always have some redeeming qualities,
Mhm.
and someone will always have some flaws, and that's how the world works. And it's like holding up a mirror in front of your eyes. Like, see those people you think he is a hero. He may not be a hero, and think see you these people who you think are complete like villains. They might not be that bad at all. So that's what Alan Moore did with the Watchmen. Uh,
And here's my biggest grouse actually. Like if we're talking about the book, right? I'm not sure. Is it time for us to sort of get into the specifics of the movie as well, or
I
should we
would
just
like
stick
to.
with the
I would
book?
like to discuss about the story within the story, the comic that was going on in the comic book.
The Black
Yeah,
Freighter.
yeah. So Tales of the Black Freighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people happen to think about what the significance of the Black Freighter is, right?
Right.
And what it basically represents is sort of nuclear Armageddon.
Hmm.
As in, the thing is, it was written in the 80s, which was around the time of the Cold War, and there was the threat of nuclear annihilation and all of that, intercontinental ballistic missiles. So there was a lot of uncertainty, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of, I don't know, people just generally being,
And
scared
anxious.
and frightened. Yeah, very anxious, exactly.
Right.
They're not really
Hmm.
sure, they're on edge, they don't know what is going to happen next. And the Black Freighter story represents sort of Ozymandias's, his journey as to how am I going to cut through this jungle of ignorance, and how am I going to go through this saga, this journey? Because at the end of the day, the Black Freighter, the victims are all victims of nuclear
Yeah,
Armageddon.
exactly.
And Ozymandias is the sailor, the captain
And the
of the
sole
ship,
survivor.
whatever,
Fine survivor.
the sole
Yeah.
survivor.
And he
And
even
if you
kills the
notice,
people he really
Ozymandias,
wants to protect.
Yeah, that's the quote.
exactly,
That quote has always stayed with me. Like, in order to save billions, you have to kill millions. Like, there should always be some collateral damage. Thus,
that's
yeah.
what I say, right? In the case of a nuclear devastation or in any kind of missile attack, they're called accepted
Yeah.
casualties.
Like,
Right.
there's
So
not a never there never will be a win-win situation on both sides. Yeah,
yeah,
that's basically what
yeah.
Alan Moore represented. So,
And Ozymandias is supposedly a hero, the world's
man,
smartest man, someone who actually made his money, according to the books reporters, by profiteering of his own secret
yeah,
identity. And that's not something a superhero, like the classical definition of a superhero, would do. But here, the entire trope is
but
being
but
broken down.
but
It's being
you know
subverted.
who would do it, right? A politician.
Time to go